What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and this video I want to talk about Metaphor, ReFantazio, and a potential sequel. Now, this isn't all that new. I mean, the part we're about to talk about today is new, but we've heard, even leading into when Metaphor was coming out, that there seemingly was a thought process there. They wanted to make this its own distinct thing, right? I think they even talked about, like, pillars of the company, but there's actually a article that's coming out. I think it's in the weekly Famitsu magazine. Doesn't come out till January, but part of it has already come out. But they talked to the head of Studio Zero, and there's a couple bullet points I think that are pretty interesting to go over. So he says there's no concrete plans to make Metaphor into a series, although he does hope that it can become a series one day. Since the project started, the goal was to create a third JRPG series alongside Shin Megami Tensei and Persona. I'd like to develop it into a flagship title that represents our company. And so, a little like we kind of heard some of it before, but also I guess actually some definitive answers there where as of right now, I guess there's no sequel planned or even sequel coming, and it's something that you just kind of have to hope for as time goes on. I think, based off what he says after it, right, that he wants to make it a pillar, and I also think it was successful. We don't know really sales beyond that first, I think in the first 24 hours, the game sold 1 million units. Like, it did really good. It might have outsold Persona 3 Reload. We really don't know. Persona 3 Reload took longer to get to 1 million, I believe, than Metaphor did. But they're not great with later on, like, telling us, oh, it sold 2.5 million, it sold 3.75. They're not really good at that. They're good at telling us the first day or first week, how well it did. But, you look at the awards and stuff, and while I don't put a lot of stock into awards, when a game does that well and is that kind of like critical darling, and then, if it did sell, say, 2-3 million units kind of quietly behind the scenes, I think that'll send a message, right? Next up is Persona 6. It's gotta be, right? But, this is something that I think a lot of people have talked about, but, it's something that I do think is really important. I think it is important to have a game like Metaphor, or a franchise like Metaphor, and it's something I think is really impressive, and you kind of want to see it, or at least I want to see it even from like other studios. Like, when you have something as established as Persona has become, and it's really become, I think, their flagship thing, having Metaphor, and then having it do well, right? That's kind of like the cherry on top. But having Metaphor allows you to kind of repeat, okay? So there is some repetition between, and it was like systems, right? Like how the game actually operates. If you show Metaphor to somebody who's played Persona, they can put 2 and 2 together, right? Or 1 and 1, I guess. But it allows them to kind of do other things. Number one, there's just the improvements that you can make between one game to the next, right? So Persona 5 made Metaphor better. And Metaphor, I hope, is going to make Persona 6 stronger, right? Because you look at what Metaphor either changed or added to the system of how these games work, and you implement that system, right? That's the carryover. That is what does cross over from one to the next. But the other side of things that people have pointed out, right, that's maybe equally as important, it allows them to just kind of flesh out maybe different parts of the brain, right? Different creative feelings that they have, telling a story in a different time period, telling a story that's not high school, right? They've declared what Persona is, and I'm completely fine with it. I like that about Persona, but to be able to almost flex, right, and say, okay, well, let's put it in this medieval type thing, and obviously you get brand new characters, but also, okay, well, the violence is kind of ratcheted up. Right now, I'm not all the way through. Actually, I have played a good amount of Metaphor over the past month or so, but I'm still not all the way through. But the game can get dark, and the game can, Persona can hint at dark things, but I think what Metaphor has done 36 hours that I'm in the game, it's able to almost present it right at you. And it's just able to kind of push things a little bit differently than you're able to do in Persona. And I think just creatively, okay, I think that's really important. Not to mention, again, I think what is equally important is just, one thing can make the other better, right? Metaphor takes a lot of what Persona 5 did, and then, the gameplay systems of hanging out with people and traversal, right? Like how Metaphor does travel days, right? And just kind of adds to it, right? Just kind of expands. And those are things that Persona can absolutely take and continue. But then, having that flex of, okay, well, let's just tell a different kind of story, and some things that you just can't do in Persona, we can do with Metaphor. So I think it's even the for a benefit of like their mental health, okay, for like their minds, their creative minds, to be able to do these games on top of, okay, from a business, yeah, it would be really cool to say, hey, Atlus can do more than one thing, right? I mean, technically, Shin Megami and Persona, that's two right there, but to say, okay, well, we got those two, but we also got this third pillar in Metaphor, and I think that's important financially, that's important for a lot of reasons, right? Just to have three different franchises, and so, yeah, I mean, I think it is important that Metaphor becomes a franchise, and it should. I don't know how it ends, actually, so story-wise, I don't know if it can become, like a direct sequel. You don't have to tell me in the comments, it's okay, but, I think the game deserves it. I think the game is such high quality, and clearly, I think people that played it really, really loved it, so hopefully we get more Metaphor games. But again, Persona 6 first, if you would be so kind. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.